All right, hanging with my friend Kevin Waters. Welcome, Kevin, to the Paul Sponcia show, not the Paul Harvey show.
I like it. Thanks for letting me
Yeah,
come spend time with you.
I wish I had a. I wish I had a. No, I don't wish I had a show. That'd be too much pressure. But I enjoy being with you socially distanced in a virtual way. Although I much more enjoy just hanging with you. So, but welcome.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So,
Glad to be here.
so talking about remote workforce, but first off, why don't we talk about Kevin? Tell me. I already know. Don't tell me. Tell whoever watches this video. What is Kevin? What is Clear Leader Group? Tell us what you do.
Yeah, so thanks, Paul. Glad to be here. Clear Leader Group is a company. My team is designed to help other teams get success out of their people. So specifically, aligning your business strategy with people strategy. If you think about every year, we go out of December with our planning, we create our KPIs, we have rocks, whatever we use to say what our revenue targets are, what we want to hit by December 31. But the thing that's really hard is to align people strategy. So if you think about what Jim Collins said about get the right people in the right seats, it's nice in theory, but most of us don't do it. So we help our folks, we use science to help them define the roles and then get the right people in those roles and see prediction of success. And that's really good. Works.
Cool. Awesome.
Works.
So, obviously, we are talking because the world is fast moving to everybody
Yeah.
working from home, and we it is crazy to think that just 14 days ago, 21 days ago, there was a movement, but now it's like a just madness rush. Everybody's moving. I know our company's been crazy busy trying to help people get set up from home, and et cetera.
Mhm.
You have been doing this actually for a really long time, and your company obviously is set up that way now. So, and I know you've got some practical advice to share. So, why don't we just jump into what you kind of your practical, what are the things that people need to be thinking about?
Okay, I appreciate that. My goal, I think, is to encourage managers, to encourage owners of companies to think through how do you set someone up for success. I remember 12 years ago when I was on the Johnson Controls team, I was working out of my house and I had to be able to discipline my talent, discipline myself, be able to make choices. And some of the choices I had to work through were critical to me being able to succeed over that time. So for 12 years, I had to work out of my house. So a couple things I just want to encourage anyone who's listening that is working from home now by force because they have to, or anyone who's considering that. Just a couple of things. Number one, you've got to demark a space. You have to say, this is mine. This is where I work. Like in my office here, this is the office I created. It's got a nice articulating desk. It's got everything I need. My computer's up on a platform. I've got good internet. So I set up everything I needed to be able to succeed. Shut my door. Family knows when I'm in here. I'm in here. And at that time, my kids were, so 6, 7, 8, 9 different ages. So number one, you got to create a space. Number two, in that space, when you set up your technology, it needs to have some natural lighting. It's not really appropriate to work on a couch, even to sit on the edge of your bed or have your curtains closed in a cave. It tends to make productivity drop. So you have to have an environment set up aside, have some natural lighting. That's critical. I think the other thing that was big for me was using technology to meet regularly with your team. So we used all sorts of tools. I know you use Microsoft Suites. We use different other things, but the reality is you got to connect with your team. You got to be productive. So I can't make decisions independent from others on my team, whether they're engineers or whatever. So we have to hear from each other. Really helps if that video is on and not off, because then you sort of need to be dressed up for work. Can't just be looking like a scuzz. I noticed you didn't shave today, so I'm just kidding.
My head.
Yeah, that would look bad if you decide to let that go. So I already said this, but dressing professionally for work, it matters. If you're sitting in shorts and you don't have your shoes on, it just says something to the psyche that says, I'm not really serious about what I'm doing. I'm not really working. You have a thought on that?
No, I have shoes on, so I was thinking, I actually, it's just kind of natural for me. Like today, last week, we had a baby a week ago, Friday. So last week I was probably a lot more bummed around, but I knew today I had a couple of calls. I had this today, and I did an earlier one with another person. and I intentionally got up at a normal time, took a shower, put pants and a shirt on, and shaved my head and my neck, and put my shoes on. And it is interesting psychologically what a difference it makes. It really does.
So back to the point of virtual, if I know I'm going to be seen, I'm going to put on my clothes, and I'm going to make that look as good as I can. We wish people didn't judge on perception. They do. And there's a few people on the planet that can get away with a t-shirt and just be so wicked talented that nobody cares. But for most of us, we do have to work and be part of a team and bring that value, especially if we're in leadership. It communicates a really poor message to our folks if we're bumming and scuzzing. I know you IT guys, you have a tendency to be sort of chill, but.
Well, I will say at our 750 leadership huddle, none of us were real super dressed up. I was wearing a hoodie.
I believe that. Were you hooded up?
It wasn't on my head. It wasn't on my head, but I was, in a different state of mind.
So if you create yourself a space and you demark it and you have natural lighting, you dress up for work. And I think the next thing is creating to-do lists and calendar blockers to be able to identify my day starts at X time and actually start your day. I think I would actually grab my phone and I would actually put my calendar start time. It's really weird to stay downstairs by the fireplace with my coffee, which I have here, coffee in my hand, and relax and talk to my wife, Deborah, for another 30 minutes and burn time. It's really something else to say, I got to get to work and I've got to start moving. So anyway, so that's really, really important to be able to set that aside and start on time. I recommend working in blocks and making sure you get breaks at times. I'd also recommend if people are working from home, they watch the refrigerator. There's so much eating going on. It's easy to snack and just sort of relax. And you could put on 10 pounds in a heartbeat if you're not careful about your health. Also, your mental break. I think you have to get up and get outside, walk, breathe, and get away from work. One of my clients relayed that she's getting emails from her staff at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. So we're actually seeing the opposite. It's not that they're not working enough. It's actually they're not getting a break from their stuff. That's a problem.
Blending even more, the lines are blurring even further.
They do. My wife always has to ask me, her favorite question is, are you home yet? Because I'll go downstairs and grab a cup of water, some coffee, and she doesn't know at 6 o'clock if I'm home yet. And I'll just say, not yet. So up here in my office, I've got my phone and I leave my phone on this charger. And when I'm done with my day, I drop that thing on there and I walk downstairs and I don't tell her I'm home, but she knows.
Honey, I'm
and
home.
I try to be there for the family. It's weird though, because when exactly. When you normally walk through the door, there's a clear line. You just came home, right?
Yeah.
And most of us aren't good leaders at that either. We're on our phones, we're busy, we're still haven't transitioned, but it's really weirder when you're working from the house. One more thing of importance, if you got young kids and you have that nurturing wiring that you just desire to care about people, it's really, really hard. So you have to be creative and practical with giving your kids things to do, putting on music, setting the video, working in bursts and then quitting, and then going for 15 minutes, touch your kids, get back to a 30, 40-minute run.
Yeah, I was sharing with somebody, and my wife also, like especially in this time when we have a 10-day-old and a 19-month-old, just because I'm downstairs and I'm away from them, I can kind of still hear what's going on. And so when I hear, both of them crying, I can tell my wife is becoming a little more stressed. My tendency is I want to go, just help her, and so kind of managing that and realizing that, well, what would happen if I wasn't here? Like, that's nice. It is nice that I am here and I can help. So how do I balance? And that was actually one thing I made a note, or is this a good time to ask you a question?
Yeah, that's it.
I made a note of that. Like, how do you manage the natural tendency and negotiate probably for some of us, what you said, the natural tendency to want to go help, and also kind of negotiate that with your wife and your kids that I'm home, but that doesn't mean I don't have to work. Like, how do you work through that?
So Deborah has my calendar. She sees it. She knows what I'm dealing with. She knows what my schedule holds. And so and she did a really good job of protecting my time. I think one of the things we realize is we have to act like as if we are at work. And that's the same reason why you have to have a space and you have to have all these things and dress up. We all know the proverbial conference call with the dog barking in the background, how unprofessional that feels. Same thing with a kid banging on the door.
Yeah.
It's kind of human. It's kind of important, but at the same time, I think just having that communication with your spouse. Now, what if you're both working from home? And
Yeah.
what if you both have responsibilities? Then I think you just have to figure out, there's certain critical things I have to do during the day. I've got this call with Paul, that kind of thing. You just got to do it. And
Yeah.
then you have to negotiate. So can be tough.
Yeah, that's good. Huh. It's a great transition too. Like, so there's those practical things, but we have this kind of historic leadership sort of mentality that says there's an office, we come to it, we do work. I don't know that even absent of this event, I think that was largely changing, and probably over the next 10 or 20 years, as the next generation moves into leadership positions, things would probably be different. But now that we're doing it fast, how do leaders really work through transition and set their organizations up well? So what you mentioned are some practical things that people can do. So what does it look like from the leadership perspective to help the company and the whole organization transition, 100% or part? There's some jobs you can't transition, but
Yeah.
how do we do this well?
So I spoke with one of my president of a company today, and he's got warehouse folks that are doing stuff. They have to physically be there. They have to pick and ship.
Yeah.
I mean, they have things they have to do. But he's got 70% of his force working remote. All the inside salespeople are out. All the outside salespeople are still out. Any role that could be negotiated out is out. So I think part of it, and this will be a good transition for us, is managing people. You manage a person, you don't manage their environment. You manage a person, you don't manage groups. You have to deal with the individual, and they all have different needs. And so it's really understanding who's in front of me. Are they socially driven, or are they private and reserved? So we'll talk about specifics on that and how I use tools to help my teams do that. Because once I understand the need of that person, then I can predict how they're going to act, and then I can lead them effectively. So let me give you a cool thought. You and I both, I think as Christian leaders, in our heads, we go, golden rule. We've heard it forever. But here's the thing. The golden rule doesn't work. That treat others the way you want to be treated. A lot of managers make that mistake. They kind of roll and they go, hey, I'm just going to treat you the way I want to be treated. Clearly, you want to talk out loud like I do. It's not true at all. There's half the people on the planet that don't want to talk out loud. They want to think it out. And so the platinum rule is better. The platinum rule is leading people the way that they need to be led. And so I come to my talkers and I let them talk, and I come to my thinkers, I give them time. So now I've got my team remote. I can't see them. I can't go walk past a cube or an office. I got some challenges on my hand I didn't have before.
Yeah.
And now I need to know my people. And if I don't know them, I'm going to get some things wrong for sure.
So there's tons of, stuff's been around forever. DISC, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram is getting a lot of popularity in the world today. Divine, your predictive index is kind of your world. So what are ways that we can utilize tools like that? I mean, we would have, I love those things anyhow. So
yeah, you do.
For me, it doesn't require any convincing, but but I do think in this kind of realm, like, how do we utilize those tools, and how do those tools speak to us or tell us?
It's good.
In a remote world, how to manage people? Because in a typical, I know that such and such a person is this kind of wired this way. I need to be maybe a little more nurturing with the way that I speak to them versus some people are like, just give me the facts. Right. And there's a lot of body language, and there's, we can have a lot of those conversations just because, real time. I heard you having this conversation. Can you come? Can we sit in my office and just talk about that?
Yep.
All that's blown up. Nothing
Boom,
exists.
It's gone.
So what do we do? How do we use these tools? How do we do this?
So whatever tool you use, you have to have a tool. And I think one of the reasons, let me frame up Predictive Index for me, why I chose it. So I'm an MBTI certified guy. You know that. I've done DISC for years. There's value in all the psychometrics. In fact, the framing of those are very similar. They come from the same historical roots from our country. But I took PI for me specifically because it's a 5-minute assessment that gives me incredible insights on somebody. I don't have to guess. So if you're not using a tool, or you're not as intuitive as Paul Sponsi is, because Paul's actually really talented, intuitive, you had a really natural gut sense read on people. It's hard, not natural for a lot of leaders. Many of them are very pragmatic and practical, and they see it and they can't read beyond that. So it's hard. So if you don't have an assessing tool and you're on your own, and then you're watching behavior and you're guessing at the drives. So I wanted a tool. This is the word that came to me when I started my company. I wanted a tool that I could embed in an organization that would help them self-manage without having to be dependent on me as a consultant. So the software allows them to actually self-manage their people. So for example, the same client I mentioned earlier, he's pulling off his KPI rocks for how he wants his managers working with his remote teams. And he's pulling it out of the software, and he's pulling out relationship charts, personal development charts. It's all there based on not guesses, but actually how that person's wired. So you got to have a tool, you got to have assessment. It's got to get your results. If it doesn't get your results, it's not worth it. So we get a lot of reports. I have clients that use DISC. This is great, but I get a report that's 25 pages long, and they'll use it for hiring assessments, which they're good for, but they don't know what to do with them once they have them. It sits on a desk, it's on a shelf. So now you're in a remote environment. Do you really know your people? Like, do you really know what drives them? If you don't, you're guessing.
Yeah, I think like
it's hard.
What if we're hiring people that are, and the cool thing about what happens is the world is now open to us. I can hire somebody in Washington State, in Connecticut, in West Virginia, in Florida. Like my workforce can be distributed, which opens up all kinds of opportunities, but it also opens up some real challenges. These people never sit in I don't ever have interaction with them in a personal way that we used to have interactions with, and I'm not just having water cooler conversations or whatever. So that to me as a leader, that is I'm a culture person. I believe Peter Drucker, culture trumps what is it? Culture trumps
culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah, like that's like I believe that, even though I believe strategy and execution are killer are critical, but you have a great culture with great people, you can accomplish a lot more. And so that's the first thing I think of is, so how do you create great culture? How do we use these tools? How do we create this inside of this remote kind of virtual environment? People have been doing it, so obviously you can do it.
So the remote environment just made it more complicated. It just does, because it takes all those human elements and predictive guessing that you get from time with people. Say 6 months, a year, some of your employees better now than you did, and then you see their performance. So to be able to predict why someone or how someone will do something without ever meeting them, actually you can in fact do that. I think it's important for us to realize there are 4 forces that destroy culture or destroy engagement. So if you look at the engagement factors across the nation, they're pretty bad. So we have these 4 things that cause challenges. The number one thing people quit, what is it? What do they quit?
Their manager.
They quit their boss. They don't quit their job. Yeah. The second thing is usually job fit. They just don't like what they're doing. The team, the way they feel about the team that they're on. And then lastly, that culture piece. And different companies have different weights on those things, but almost always uniformly, it's that manager going to be first. It's going to be those others. Well, those same 4 forces of disengagement still exist today. Yeah. They're just remotely, right? So now it's easier for them to clean their resume. Yeah, maybe not in this culture. We'll see what happens to the job market, but it's easier for people to be away from you and not be watched, to start dreaming about doing other things when they don't like their engagement with their manager, or they don't like what they're doing. So back to your question, I can take someone in Seattle, Washington, and help me predict, by knowing the role requirements, what they actually can and will do well for a long period of time. And then from there, it's just that other stuff you got to measure, like values and integrity. And then lastly, skills in the briefcase. Well, I can actually do that.
I would think even the manager, the leader, whomever, whatever you want to call it, understanding, the way they're wired, because that's going to drive, the more private person who is in a leadership, the kind of in your head processor, they're going to be able to be more in their head and secluded, so they've got to work harder, to try to engage. And there's also, I think, and maybe in some ways, this is completely non-scientific whatsoever, just a hypothesis, that I wonder if the not so great leader, maybe the person who struggles with stuff like that actually may even be better in a situation like this, because now they have, they're kind of forced to do it. Like, before it was almost like you keep invading my space.
That's true.
And now it's like, you can't really invade my space like you used to. And so it's some clear lines here of how we can operate. So it's a hypothesis. I don't know if it's real.
It's going to help. it's going to help some people, not others. So let's talk about a couple practical ways to just predict how people might have needs right now. Okay.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
We're great. Yep.
Okay.
Good.
So a couple things. First of all, let's just talk about in predictive index, high B, low B, or what you and I might call extrovert introvert drives. Okay.
Okay.
They're completely different on how they approach meetings. They're completely different in their needs. High Bs, in my world, extroverts need to talk it out. They literally speak, and as they're talking, they realize that's what they meant, and that's what they meant when they get it out of them. It's literally verbal external processing. The low B, or the introvert style, needs to think it out. In fact, they won't speak until they're pretty sure they know what they're going to say. They're analytical, technical, factual communicators. Sometimes they come across cold, but they're actually not. They're actually processing. So if I'm going to hold a virtual conference call with my team, let's say there's 4 of us on the call. If I have someone who's introverted, low B, I'm going to send them the agenda ahead of time. And in the agenda, I'm going to tell them specifically what we're going to talk about and what I want them to be prepared to talk about. They will be prepared, and they'll bring a lot of value to the team. My high B extrovert still won't prepare. We'll show up and talk all the way through the meeting and disrupt everybody. That is just the way it is. But you have to know that. Okay, was that helpful? That's that one.
Yeah. No, I just laughed because I mean, you're the extrovert, I'm the introvert. So
yes, buddy. You and me together. Yeah. Donkey and Shrek, you and I somehow nasty together. I would say this too, that my high Bs, let's say I'm virtual now and I used to have a cooler talk. Now I don't have that. So my extroverts have got to talk. So if I'm an intentional manager, I'm putting them on a call. I may do it early in the morning to start their day. I would not use it as accountability. What are you working on today? No one likes that. I would call them, just say, how you doing? How you feeling? How's your family? What's going on in your world? And connect with them. And then say, how can I help you? Let them talk. My Bs don't want that. They're the ones that don't, the low Bs don't want to talk about weather and sports and who's not playing in the SEC tournament because it got canceled, right?
Well, I wrote a LinkedIn article today about a little bit of longer than I wanted it to be, but ended up whatever. But it was because one of my team members asked me, so how should we be led as A players? Like, what is that? What does leadership look like? Like, I don't, what should I expect? And so it made me really think about, the goal of a leader is really to so different categories, but from a core company perspective, it's to multiply leadership. It's to multiply productivity and effectiveness to get more out of the people than you could do yourself. So if I have 3 people, I should be able to do, not just 3 times more, but maybe 300% more, or 600% more, 900% more. So doing that requires, asking questions, listening really well, and being available to people. So I think about what you just said there. I think to me, that's the critical aspect of any type of leadership. Is just my job, whether you're an extrovert or introvert, is to always ask you, how are you doing? And maybe with the introvert, what you're saying is you maybe prepare them that, hey, I'd like you think about how things are going, what issues you're faced with, challenges you have. Like we do a daily huddle, and everybody knows we're going to say, what's good news? What is your number one priority today? And do you have any issues or stucks? And so my introverts are prepared that they know they're going to have those questions today.
Right.
And my extroverts don't need to be prepared. They can just be like, I don't know, that's what I got to do. So I don't know. I think about that like. I just realized how intentional this requires us to be, like more than ever.
It's a really good word. I would agree with that. And I think, if your low B or introvert shows up not prepared, I got one of 2 things going on. I've got a person checking on me out, struggling, or I've got a person who's too loaded and I don't have time to prepare because they tend to take it very seriously. They want to be prepared, don't like to be surprised, especially in your space with the IT world, because so many of your guys are technical, perfectionistic tendencies. So they have a tendency to not want to bring harm to a team. So they'll also be prepared. So that's a pretty interesting predictor of potential disengagement. If they come in and they're just always beshoveled or whatever that word is and distracted, that could be a challenge. The thing I was going to talk about is in PI world is the environment that unleashes someone's full potential. So some environments where you and I think are similar in this regard, want pace, want variety, want to multitask, need a lot of change within my day. My high C's or my patient people steady, they don't need that at all. They want consistency. When I give them a list, I'm going to do number 1, then number 2, then number 3, and number 4. If I hand me at least a list of top 10, I'm going to do number 1 because it looks interesting to me, then number 5, number 6. So I wrote down some notes. I just want to share just a couple thoughts because it's really important. When I have my steady, patient people, They like it steady, but don't move their cheese. They're patient forever, but man, when they blow, it's epic. Something you don't want to watch. If you're going to change their world, you have to tell them why it matters. So I think way I'm going to manage different people that are very steady process people, the people who build process in my world, I'm going to let them know these are the 5 most important things I want you to do. These are the order they're in. They're not time sensitive, but they're all important. Get after them. They will do number 1 till it's done. Number 2. So if I'm home right now and my kids are yelling on the other side of that door, and I feel that pressure, that nurturing care pressure, and I haven't separated it and my list isn't clear, my cheese is moved. It's extremely stressful. And what they do, they spin in space. They just stand and turn. Your productivity is going to drop dramatically. Also, when you take a high C in my world, this patient, steady person out of a traffic area, productivity will boost 35%. So in some respects, we have an opportunity to capture a non-trafficked, we pulled you out of your cube, out of your booth, out of your office, put you in your home environment. If I can help you set an environment and a clarity of tasks I want you to do, they will succeed and they'll do very well. And you might actually get a productivity bump out of them because they don't have the same needs that some of those other people have.
Yeah.
So it's really important to think through, where are my steady process people, the people who are steady and patient with people, who believe rules come before people. When I have those people in the right seats with a list, they will not come out and do it. It doesn't matter from home. They'll do them from an airplane. Doesn't matter. They'll do them all.
Does it make sense, to just kind of, I was thinking about reality, like, do you say, hey, we're going to do both. If work from home is better for you, work from home. Mm-hmm. If you need an office environment, then we're going to have an office environment. So does that, is there, I guess, are there people that just can't do it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Without structure. Yeah, there's a specific pattern. I could show you several of them where they're relaxed with rules. They're what we call 80% finishers. They get it to the red zone, don't score touchdowns. Mm-hmm. They need that team pressure, deadlines and stuff to get things done. When you have that type of wiring, we call it casual with rules. Yeah, there's a real risk that they're going to, work for 30 minutes, go play Xbox for an hour and a half, lose track of time. Believe me, it's real. And then come back to their work. So setting them up with a structure and an expectation. So we don't have to tell them you have to have this done by X, but we have to say you can't miss this deadline. Give them a deadline. Right. They can't do Gantt charts. They don't do They need last minute pressure to bring out their best work as well.
Interesting.
So yeah, there are some that you can predict management challenges with, absolutely predict it.
Yeah.
There's others, they'll never fail you. They'll always do the same thing. They'll work too hard. They'll never stop.
Well, I know that we need to wrap it up, but I know that right now, there are probably not a lot of people who are, in this kind of crazy mode that we're in right now, calling and saying, Kevin, I need help, because they're just scrambling to do other stuff. But,
sure.
I've known you for a long time. I know you're very gifted at this, but it seems like if people are really going to get this right, that they need some help. They need some tools like PI or, like you said, whatever. If something that allows them to understand because just what you said, I mean, if you have normally hired and used these tools for hiring, they may not be as relevant, or they may not work the same way. It's not that they're not relevant, but they may not work the same way, or you may not be able to interpret them the same way in this new world. Understanding that I can't just slam everybody into a work from home environment and expect them to figure it out. Like there's structure, and I need to know who these people are and how they're wired. And so I think,
well, I actually have people on my team that can help me build the structure naturally. There's actually people sitting inside your building right now that could actually figure this out with you in a teamwork. But again, you have to know who they are. And there's process builders, there's bottom liners, innovators, and team people. But you can actually figure out where they are and predict what their needs are. Right. So first you hire them right, but then you inspire them by ongoing process of engagement to keep them engaged. So I think you have to have tools to be able to predict. I expect, just to your question, that this is going to be a tight time for me for a couple months, I think. But I think when people come out of this, couple things, our revenues are going to be off, most of us.
Yeah.
And we're going to look hard at their talent, and they're going to say, where are my A1, A2, A3s? Where are my B1, B2 players? And they're going to try to figure out what they can do. That's another word of encouragement for anyone listening that doesn't work at home but is now starting to. Man, discipline your talent, set yourself up for success, put a knife to your throat, manage yourself well, because people are going to be looking at talent and determining, where they can cut muscle if they have to, or at least fat. So well, I can help teams do that as well.
So that was one really important thing we talked about is, and I would encourage people in this way, but don't make the mistake that I would say this to leaders and people thinking about this. This isn't a chance to get people to go from home and cut pay. I've watched some posts about that. Oh, I can pay people less because, I mean, well, they're not any less valuable than they were before.
Correct. 100% agree.
Yeah, so I think we need to be really cautious. We might be able to save money, like I talked about in office space. I mean, we may see the massive corporate office go the way of the massive malls, where we no longer have corporate offices of 500, 1,000, 10,000 people, that we have smaller offices clustered with, and I think about these companies like Facebook and Apple, though, they have these massive campuses. So there's some, there's obviously those are massive companies. So
it's like there's a hybrid. There's something going on here. We know we're in a transition. You can feel it. It's going to be a different work world a year from now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of articles on LinkedIn that guys write that are guys and gals that are talented in this space, and they're telling us this is coming. And again, there's more technology in my phone than there was, putting the guys on the moon. So anyway, lots going on there. Hey, thanks for your time. Appreciate you very much.
Any last things you want to say before we jump off?
Take care of our people, man. They are the engine that drives our business results. We have to have people strategy. People execute strategy. Got to have them. Got to have the right people in the right seat. So do it well.
All right, man. I appreciate you.
Talk to you.